All right, good morning, everyone. Call to order this meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee on September 27th. We are convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 as it's extended on July 16th of 2022. This meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating remotely via Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to share your device's screen. Please silence all phones and devices. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use their full name or who acts inappropriately. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. If you're not able to participate in the remote meeting, you may submit comments to the Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Vince Murphy, to be read into the meeting record. His email is vmurphy@nantucket-ma.gov. Confirming member access, I am Mary Longacre, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Gary Beller.
Here.
Peter Brace.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
Ian Golding.
Yes.
Rachel Freeman.
Here.
I don't see Jen joining us yet. And Joe Topham.
Here.
Okay. We do have a couple of members who are anticipated to join either late or not be available today. Staff, when I call your name, please respond. Affirmative. Vince Murphy.
Here.
Lauren Sinatra. Lauren's got her call. So Izzy Gaw is also here as a speaker today. Izzy, welcome. You want to say hello?
Hello.
We'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Okay, turning to the agenda. First item we have is the approval of minutes from August 23rd. The minutes from September 13th are not available yet, so we'll take a look at our next meeting for those. For August 23rd, I thought we should separate under the attendees those who are members of the committee and those who are staff. So Vince Murphy would be called out separately, and we would make clear how many members of the committee were available. I also thought that we probably didn't need to track the comings and goings of the guests. I don't know if that's required, but I don't know that it's helpful. So if we want to edit that, are there any other comments on the meeting minutes? And if there are no comments, do we want to approve the minutes with the deletion of some of the notes about who joined and left the meeting if that person was not a committee member?
So moved.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gary. Roll call vote. Gary Beller.
Aye.
Peter Brace.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Ian Golding.
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. So next we have an update on the events that were held for Climate Change Awareness Month, and Izzy Gaw from Acclimate is here to tell us a little bit more about how those went.
Hi. I'm Izzy Gaw. I'm the Acclimate coordinator currently, and thank you guys for having me here today to talk about Climate Change Awareness Month. So we held a couple of events through Acclimate for the first time to see how that would go, to just forward climate change awareness topics and discussion. We had an International Coastal Cleanup Day on September 17th. So we held a beach cleanup in Sconset. It was pretty successful for our first beach cleanup. We picked up 88.6 pounds of trash. We had the Nantucket Boys and Girls Club that participated and a few public groups as well. And then we also had a sustainable transport bike parade from the James Coffin Rotary to the Life Saving Museum. We had a few public signups as well, but it was a bit smaller than the cleanup, but it was the first year. So to be expected, but it went well. We had lots of good climate change discussion. And then we learned about storms and disasters at the Life Saving Museum. So pretty productive. And then our last big event is tomorrow, which is the Acclimate Partner Gathering. You guys are all welcome to come if you want. It's 33 Washington Street. There'll be coffee and pastries, and hopefully we'll all talk about climate change awareness strategies, which is fantastic. We also held a virtual scavenger hunt on Goose Chase. This is something Acclimate has been doing for a few, I think 2 years. And it's ending at the end of the month. So if you guys are playing, just a heads up, it's closing soon. And we have about 16 participants and about $2,000 worth of prizes from our partners. So that's pretty cool. And then we did several Instagram posts about climate change related topics across Nantucket and how our local organizations and partners are also addressing them. And on our website, we created a climate change awareness toolkit with lots of resources and articles discussing the implications of climate change, where we also highlighted the Coastal Resiliency Plan and how Nantucket is specifically addressing these problems.
Great, thank you, Izzy. Any comments or questions for Izzy? Or in general about Acclimate's activities? Well, thank you for putting this together, and the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is a member of Acclimate, and some of our committee members are also members in their regular roles. So we're always happy to cooperate with Acclimate to help raise climate change awareness. Vince, you had a comment?
Simple one. Big thank you to Izzy for coming to give this presentation, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, continuing, we have an update on our CZM grant application from Vince Murphy.
All right, so everybody on this committee might remember that the committee went through the process along with me of reviewing and then submitting the CZM grant. I think it was June 10th or early June this year. I have had the result in. I have forwarded it to all the committee members, but to make it publicly known, we were unsuccessful. We did not get the CZM grant for the core section of the downtown flood relief barrier that would have focused on Easy Street and the bottom of Broad Street for a feasibility assessment. We have been unsuccessful. As is customary, we were offered the opportunity to get feedback to see where we were lacking or what was under par. I have sent in that request. Once I hear back, we'll get that feedback, and I'll have a brief report back to the committee at that point. We'll just see how it goes. And I'm thank the committee for their superb efforts in this, but I'm sorry that this was unsuccessful.
Yeah, well, better luck next time. And hopefully the feedback will prove useful in being more successful in the future. Gary, comment?
Yes, I have a comment. After looking through the awards that were granted for this particular funding, I am very disappointed and very surprised to see some of the things that were approved and ours was not. And I guess I'm even more disappointed because when we had the presentation from the official from the department, you know, he was pretty optimistic. At least I felt he was sounding optimistic. He understood the seriousness of these issues for the island of Nantucket and for this particular area of the town that's so important for passage of people, goods, equipment, and whatever. So I'm very disappointed. And I looked at all of the different things that were successful, and I'm just so surprised. I guess I can't wait for them to come back and tell us what the answer was. I don't know if it was politicizing, or did they decide that Nantucket's too rich an island and therefore we're not going to give them any of this grant, or was there some rationale behind their decision not to award us at least some portion of our request?
I can answer part of that, Mary. So this is one of the reasons why we seek feedback. I don't think, or technically speaking, I'm sorry, probably 100% the case, Politicizing any of these doesn't happen. It's on a points-based system. So when they put out the ad or the request for proposals, they also put out, the points that are associated with each category, so that when we were responding, we were trying to maximize the points in as many categories as we could. We know that there were some categories that we couldn't pick up enough points on, for the sake of argument, for disadvantaged communities. Because it was in the center of downtown Nantucket, we don't have a disadvantaged community there. But the only disadvantaged community that we actually have is on the south shore of the island. So, we could say that, which we did, that it would help serve that disadvantaged community by allowing passage to the mainland, but that is a relatively low scoring answer. So we want to see where we dropped points. So that's the biggest thing we want to get out of when we seek feedback, for the sake of argument. And just to say that, put it out there that everybody knows this, there were 27 projects funded, and the 27 projects from all around the state had just a pot of $12.6 million. Some projects were very high value. Some projects were comparable and under the kind of money we were applying for or looking for. And some were extremely similar to ours in some ways, looking at resilience planning efforts. But I can see how everyone here is disappointed. I'm disappointed, especially when you see the list of projects that were funded. We were certainly in the mix, and we were certainly on the money. This is the right grant for us to apply for. But it's like poker, you can't win them all.
Thank you, Vince. Do we know how many projects weren't funded?
No,
The
not yet.
27 were? Yeah, okay. Yeah, because if it was 27 out of 150, that would be a lot more understandable than if it was 27 out of 30,
Oh, I beg your pardon. I think I do. Hang on. Oh, no, I've misread it. We do not know.
Okay. Just curious. Any other comments on that disappointing news? I'm not seeing any. So next topic on the agenda. So again, for Climate Change Awareness Month, I thought it might be nice to take a look at Nantucket's efforts over time for climate action plan. And, back in 2008, Sustainable Nantucket had a partnership with the town to work on that. That plan was not adopted, was released in 2010, as I understand. And then some more recent initiatives. And the purpose here is not for us to review in detail each initiative, but just to provide an overview of what the town has been doing for the last dozen or so years. Lauren Sinatra has been involved in a lot of those. Lauren is our energy coordinator. Lauren, if you wanted to provide any general comments on the town's climate efforts, but actually before I go to you, coincidentally, from my perspective, I didn't know it when the agenda was put together. The town released on Friday a job posting for a sustainability program manager. And the first item listed under essential duties for that is to develop a comprehensive climate action plan. So the town is moving forward on a climate action plan, building on the history that we have. And that's really great news. But Lauren, I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add.
No, it's great news. It was news to me too, but very, welcome. And Ian Golding on the call may have been involved with this effort back with the original Energy Committee. When I came on board around 2012, the Climate Action Plan had evolved into an Energy Action Plan. Climate at that point was a little too controversial. Climate change was a little bit too controversial. And the plan was never adopted, in part because many of the emissions calculations that ICLEI used were based on California standards or general federal averages. And the board and Energy Committee members at the time felt it wasn't Nantucket specific enough. So there have been a couple WPI research projects that I advised over the last few years that have revisited this plan. We looked at what would be the easiest components of the original draft plan to, revisit, enact, recommend. We've had some success there. And then in 2020, I advised another WPI student project to look at Nantucket's baseline inventory of greenhouse gases, which really does form the basis of a climate action plan. And it wasn't a perfect research study. We came across many challenges with trying to get data, for example, from our local liquid fuel providers for propane, oil, gasoline on the island, and also data from Steamship Authority was missing, which would have really informed that baseline inventory as well. But I think this is a plan that's needed. Technologies, policies, incentives have certainly evolved since 2008, 2010. Since that time, the town has become a green community. So we have our own municipal greenhouse gas emissions baseline, which I monitor. We have an energy reduction plan as part of that green communities designation. We have a fleet, an efficient fuel purchasing policy for our municipal fleet, and other initiatives as well, but it is not looking at the scope of the entire community. So I wasn't well prepared to present anything formal today, but just to be here to answer general questions and to fill in the gaps as I can to the best of my recollection.
Thank you, Laura. No, we didn't, or I didn't expect a presentation, but I really do appreciate that you're here today because you have a great perspective on what the town is doing. Ian, did you want to chime in?
Oh, just thank you, Lauren, for, 12 years ago, here we are 12 years later. Yeah.
Lauren did provide links to the Updating Nantucket's Greenhouse Gas Inventory Study and Analyze and Operationalizing the Nantucket Energy Plan, the two WPI student studies. So we'll put those links in the minutes for anybody that wants to check them out. Let's see. And I also wanted to mention that there is a recording available of the presentation by Martha's Vineyard Commission Climate Change Planner. I'm jealous that they have an actual climate change planner on the vineyard, but they don't have a coastal resilience coordinator, so consider ourselves very lucky. But the climate change planner, Liz Durkee, presented the Martha's Vineyard climate action plan that was recently adopted on that island to the NP and EDC last Monday. And so that recording is available, and there's a link in the agenda for anybody who'd like to look at that. And they also have a website for the plan, thevineyardway.org, to make sure that people are aware that that resource is there. Certainly there's a lot in common between how Martha's Vineyard would address climate change and how Nantucket would also as well. Any other comments, Gary?
Yes, I actually went through, I didn't read it very, very carefully, but I did go through a lot of it. And I'm very impressed by this plan that was created so many years ago, and unfortunately never adopted. So who was it that, how was that plan created? Who was the group? Was it just town? Was it an outside consultant? I was pretty impressed by the comprehensiveness of that document. Sorry to see that it was never adopted, but how did it get done?
Lauren, are you able to respond?
Yeah, I can respond. I was not involved at the time, but from what I understand, and it's outlined in the information two-pager that was included in the packets, Sustainable Nantucket, which was more of a sustainability nonprofit community group at the time, came to the town with its own funding and consultant who did facilitate the public engagement and drafting. And I believe the Energy Committee was consulted through the process, but an outside third-party consultant drafted the report and used ICLEI's emissions and greenhouse gas targets and calculations, which really was problematic in the end for the select board.
Thank you, Lauren. Other comments or questions? Peter, were you a reporter at this time? I didn't know if you had any particular recollection of the process.
I just remember it not being taken very seriously. I mean, by the public in general. It didn't have the immediacy of the CRP, for instance, because it wasn't something that you could actually go out and look at. You can see the water coming up all around the island. And the plan that we've produced is, I don't know. I'm struggling, I guess maybe because it didn't have that much of an impact on me. I'm having a hard time remembering. So, sorry.
It's all right, thank you. That's one of the things that struck me about the Martha's Vineyard effort. They put together in very short order and with a huge amount of public participation, their climate action plan. And I think it's probably safe to say that public opinion is more interested in these efforts now than they were a dozen years ago. So I hope that we do something similar. Peter?
I get the sense that sustainable, they struggled to get the attention of town administration to do this. Like, it seemed like it was a formality. Yeah, we'll do this, and they signed it, and it exists, and then what's happening with it? So, whereas, yes, our community seems, 100% more engaged in this plan and the CRP plan, and and it's not only the town creating a plan, it's the conservation groups have their own plans. It's Remain Nantucket having the exhibit down there in the Macy warehouse. It's all of the it's represented in so many different areas around the island that you can't miss it. Whereas the climate action plan was one of those, it seemed to me like it was destined to be one of those reports that ends up on the shelf and yeah, we did that. Okay, we've got that. And that gets us some grants to move forward with other things. Anyway, I'm sorry to be so negative, but that's the impression that I got.
I think that's the takeaway I have from that is that the town did move forward with other things. I mean, I look at it as sort of a three-legged stool between sustainability, climate action, and coastal resilience. They're all part of the general environmental focus that has been developing on the island. And I'm very happy that we did move forward and that we did have public participation in the coastal resilience plan. And I just hope we can build on that. Ian, you had another comment? And I'll just note for the record that Christy Kickham has joined us.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on what Peter had to say. My wife was chair of the board of Sustainable Nantucket at the time. And, there was, I think it became clear it was yet another report that was basically going to be shelved. And it was disappointing. And here we are, a country that due to the influence of fossil fuels, we still have a remarkable level of denial of anthropogenic climate change. And of course, our economy is based on, we have to be one of the least efficient parts of the country in terms of energy saving when you look at our construction industry and so on and so forth. So I think it's a hard ask on this island. But Lauren is the one who could probably write an autobiography on that subject if she chose to after she retired.
Yeah, I would just say the politics were very different at the time, and there were good outcomes of this plan. It raised good questions, and it shine light on what was really an opportunity for the island. So an energy office was created at the time with through Remain grant funding. And we really focused on energy efficiency at the time, which was really struggling. National Grid would not provide proper services to the island, and that took us years to get that Mass Save program back on board and for them to actually market the program and deliver regular energy assessments and all of the services that go with the surcharges we paid. So that was a very heavy lift for us as an outcome. You have to start with efficiency before you can start thinking about taking these bolder steps, which were a little too progressive at the time. So we've come a long way in the last decades, but I've always been a proponent of a climate action plan, and it's hit a variety of challenges along the way, but I think the timing is right now. And there are funding opportunities to do so. It's just about forming a collective support group and raising voices that say this is important to the community, and we have a way to move forward with, maybe even crack support here.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, and that was sort of my intention, was to to show the town that there is interest in this. And again, this was written before the job description came out, so I was very happy to see that. And I hope that as a committee, we will offer support to the new sustainability program manager when we find out who that is. Vince, a comment?
Two separate comments, if that's all right, Mary. I love to harp on about the CRP, and I'm going to do it again. The CRP is a type, or maybe even a subtype, of a climate action plan, because it deals with one aspect of climate change, mainly sea level rise, though it also deals with other things as well, such as coastal flooding and erosion, which are also impacted by sea level rise. So just a plug that this the CRP is a type, is within the realm of climate action plans, not a proper one by any stretch of the imagination, but it's in the ballpark. But I had fun, to be honest, reviewing the Vineyard Way. That plan is amazing. The way that they approached it is something else that Nantucket can take from and learn from. I hope I'm not repeating myself. I think I might have said this at the last meeting, but it's an amazing plan. The way that's put together is amazing. And the fact that it crosses 6 towns across the vineyard is amazing. But one of the things that they did is they identified a bunch of projects. I would imagine a fair number were already existing projects, things that were out there in the ether or within specific organizations or within town groups or committees or departments. But what they did was they amalgamated everything into one standing plan, and they have lead organizations attached to every one. So it might be something kind of, I don't know, growing vegetables, and then they got a local sustainable vegetable growing organization involved, got them to commit to the plan. They had already committed anyway, so it was an easy one for them to be involved in. That was one of the nice ways of getting such high level community engagement and grassroots community engagement. It was terrific. It was a very smart way of doing it. But there were one or two things when I saw their climate action plan that I felt were just as valuable as they were a bit of a letdown of sorts. Because they had such a broad scope and did so much in it, it became hard for them to understand the funding and the costs of the project. So they ended up doing something similar to what we did once upon a time, and attached like symbols, $1 to $5 symbols for if it's a cheap project or an expensive project. But that doesn't tell you much other than that it's potentially over $100,000 for the sake of argument. So, we don't have an understanding of their costings, but that's a function of the vineyard more than it is of anything else, because it's so many organizations and towns spread across. But with Nantucket, we would have a much better chance of putting actual costings to it, because we are just one town. So we have an advantage there potentially to be able to better analyze our local situation and build on the work that Lauren has done over the last decade. So that would be terrific.
Thank you, Vince. Other comments?
It's Matt. My video doesn't seem to be working.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was struck by the amount, and this is partly because Lauren was hired, but I was struck, or largely because Lauren was hired, by the amount of sort of to-do list that actually was done. We're a green community. We've had a lot of retrofits in town buildings. We've done a lot of people have had mass save out here and worked on their house. A lot of the things that are on there, more than is typically done, I would say. When we shelve something, most of the time it's very little is done. This may have been shelved, but half of it is probably underway or has been accomplished. I think we've done fairly well on this, and I think that, and partly through Lauren's work, I think the town recognizes the need to do more. I think we've been positive.
Thank you, Matt. Lauren, anything you want to add to that?
No, I really appreciate that, Matt. Am I muted? No. I would just say we have gone above and beyond the plan in many aspects. We are the only municipality in the Commonwealth that gives a local rebate for solar energy to our local residents. Through our municipal electric aggregation program, we're set to save the community $11 million this winter because National Grid's rates are tripling. And, through that program, more money comes to our solar fund, and there's more we can do with it. So, you know, we do have a challenge with our aging municipal buildings, but we continue to promote energy efficiency, renewable energy, resiliency through energy storage opportunities through our community, as well as other peak load reductions and other programs that are innovative. And we have to evolve with the time and follow the Commonwealth's, you know, charters and road pathways that have been established through state law to reduce, to become net zero by 2050 and what that means. So there's a decarbonization plan, and we don't want to fall behind, but I'm proud of the work that we've done to date, but not to say a plan wouldn't have been helpful. But we essentially know what we need to do. We know where we need to get, and I think this is the time to start bringing, you know, more pieces into that puzzle and to, you know, move forward as more of a collective group.
Thank you, Lauren. And just to clarify, you said National Grid's rates are going up. And the reason that that's not an issue on Nantucket is because Nantucket has negotiated a rate that will not change. Is that correct? So we're not subject to National Grid's rate increase?
The town's program is voluntary. I would say about 90% of residents are enrolled, so they will be fine. They will get that rate stability. But for the 200 or so residential accounts and many commercial accounts, rates will be tripling from 11 cents right now to 33 cents.
Wow. And is that program still available for people to sign up?
Absolutely. There is a caveat that if people have opted out, they may be charged market rate to come back in.
Okay. Well, thank you for that benefit that so many of us will appreciate this winter. Right. Anything else on the general history of the climate action plan on Nantucket or the opportunities for the future? Christy, if I can call on you for a moment, do you have a perspective on how the Energy Office or the climate action opportunities impact capital planning?
Let me give that some thought. Well, I mean, we have our process as far as information that is brought to us by whether it's an individual or a committee. You know, it's information that we review on, you know, the benefit of the town. A lot of our information does come from the department heads, but it also comes directly from town administration. So I do think that some information is probably sifted out beforehand based on how the town wants to see things progress. As far as, you know, the topic at hand, you know, to be honest, we don't see too much come across our desk in the way of energy efficiencies. So, you know, obviously something we could certainly bring up more with department heads as they come and interview with us. You know, probably something we should be a little more cognizant of, you know, along with coastal resiliency, which has really kind of entered our realm, you know, just this year.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Yep.
Okay, if there's nothing further on the climate action plan, the next two topics on the agenda are continued discussion. One for the checklist that we talked about at our last meeting for evaluating coastal projects for resilience. There's no new information. Vince has been on leave for several weeks, so I just left these two topics on the agenda in case members of the committee had more that they wanted to appear on future agendas as well. Ian?
Well, Mary, as I've said before, I would like us to build on the executive summary, preserving Nantucket's beach and coast into the future for as long as possible should be a primary goal. Nature-based strategies should be implemented wherever feasible with a clear emphasis on minimizing ecological impacts and maximizing ecological and public access benefits. That we send a letter to that effect to the select board to sort of repeating what the Conservation Commission, the letter that the Conservation Commission sent that I believe was shared with you. And ask the select board to forward our letter to put more pressure on Mass Waterways, that division in the DEP, so that they actually start dealing with this issue, because clearly, as we've discussed before, there are a number of bulkheads that are impediments to the intertidal zone at this point.
Thank you. Ian. Yep. Anything further from other committee members? Okay, and Vince, I know that you have that on your to-do list.
Correct. So I reviewed the document and the comments that we had at this day 2 weeks ago. I made some minor changes, just incorporating what committee members said about having two reporting times, sorry, two pictures taken per year, not just one, being a report to the Conservation Commission, not to anybody else, that kind of thing. I do have one question, if you don't mind if I put it on screen, something that I don't know was
let me note for the record, Joanna Roach has joined us at 10:36.
Perfect. So there's kind of one question that I want to put to the committee, if that's okay, Mary. And it's this here. This is a question and that has been at CONCOM for various things. I know Matt V has had substantial input into this over the past, and it's what is passable beach? It's this question here. If you want to walk around a coastal engineering structure, at what point does it not become, does it become impassable? We have to define that kind of stuff so that we could then understand when we might need to find an alternate route around it, whether it be over it or whatever the case may be. But at what point does that happen? And this is what this gets to here. I've just put in X feet of wide dry beach at high tide. The previous term that had been used is passable beach at high tide. I don't know if that's acceptable here, but it's something that has proven difficult in the past, for the sake of argument with Baxter Road, of what is passable beach. There's a definition in Baxter Road terms for it, but could we improve on it for the sake of argument? Or is there a different way of approaching this entirely? The way that it's approached in Baxter Road, if you don't mind me outlining the example, is in 2 consecutive reports and quarterly reports that you find that a beach was impassable during the survey time. So that is a nice way of doing it to one degree, but to have it regular reporting to find that it's not passable, and then if it's not passable, then what does that trigger is the question that I'm trying to get to, which is exactly Ian's point.
Ian?
Yeah, no, thank you, Vince. I mean, for chapter and for chapter 91 purposes, and Rachel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's strictly interfering, protruding into the intertidal zone. In other words, if you're taking a strictly legalistic approach, you're not allowed as a member of the public without permission from the landowner to stray 1 inch above the high tide line, wherever that has been drawn. And so in a sense, that to try and get DEP down here to start dealing with it and declaring some of these structures out of compliance with their license, I'm not sure that we want to even discuss the minimum passable zone for the purposes of a letter. So, but I mean, I think most of us would accept that, walking up to between ankle and knee deep is not a huge impediment, providing that it's, it's smooth water. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ian. Peter?
That's a good question, but then Vince kind of answered it and then Ian got into it, but ankle deep water, okay. And we set that standard but then we're proceeding into the future where it's not going to be ankle deep, it's going to be higher than that. And I'm just going to sort of just go all over the place, but you know, I'm a person who's out walking all the time, and I guide in places where water comes up to the bluff, and it's up to my hikers to want to go or not. Of course, I'm not guiding across property where there's private property where there are structures, but you know, let's take the Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund. You know, I rarely see anybody walking that beach. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this because nobody walks the beach, but it's going to become less and less walkable as the water comes up. Of course, you have to figure in littoral drift and how much sediment there is to be deposited down a given beach to keep that beach wide enough. And is the water going to come up so fast that it's not going to matter with littoral drift and the water will be up against the bank? And to further go off in a weird direction, you know, some of those structures, you can't just climb them. So you may, to pass them, you may have to go inland to go up over them, and then inland again to go down over them. And then what sort of issues does that bring up with the property owner? I think I kind of agree with what I think Ian is saying, is it's a sticky situation with the Chapter 91 permit as the waters, Chapter 91 license, as the waters continue to advance inland. So.
Thank you, Peter. Other comments?
Yeah, it's Matt.
Yep, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Ian's right that there's the legal interpretation, but then there's the, you know, how would we like it to be here? I look at, and I think sort of, you know, making a definition where we're accepting X amount of, you know, sort of water around your ankles doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The pictures that the DEP guys showed us were, you know, were ladders and stairs up and over bulkheads that were protruding, you know, into the water, showing stairs there. I could see on the North Shore where you could walk the property line and come back onto the beach. I could see something like that being allowable. I think what the definition, and this is what we've been struggling with Baxter Road, is that they're required to keep that a walkable beach. Now, we may not have defined that, or Concom may not have defined that perfectly, and we can improve that. But to date, other than major storms, that has been, in my mind. It also is needed out there. If they don't have enough sand, then the whole structure is undermined. So, you know, there's sort of some self-interest too, that they have to keep enough sand on there. If it were a pile of rocks, I'm not sure it would be quite the urgency to get the sand on. And so I think some of these definitions will be, you know, sort of are more important when Concom is putting conditions on these for renewal. You know, I think getting DEP down to say, yes, this is an issue and you're allowed to deal with it, I think would be great. And then sort of putting the definitions of what a passable beach is, you know, because even the North Shore, if they put enough sand on there, it'll be passable. You know, if they build it up, then it'll be passable. So I think there's ways, you know, if they don't want to have people go onto their property and come back down, then there's other ways to deal with it. But I think I'm really happy that Ian this has been a pet peeve of mine. I'm really happy that we've made, you know, some progress on it and that we've got some information back rather than just accepting there's nothing we can do. So I think this is something that will continue for a number of years till we really get it sorted, but I'm very happy that we're working on it.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go to Vince and then Peter.
Just wanted to chime back on one thing Peter said about some beaches, not many people walk on them. It's true entirely, but if it's a public beach and it's a public property, it doesn't matter how many people walk there. We have to keep it as public property and passable for the public.
Thank you, Vince. Peter?
Yeah, Vincent, I wasn't implying that we shouldn't keep it open. I'm just making a point that you don't see a lot of people. And then to what Matt was saying, you know, the Wisconsin, and Ian and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund, I believe, is required to make that geotube sand surface passable by people. You used to be able to walk up a ramp on one end and go down the other, and they were required to do that. And in fact, I think they even offered to do that. And now it's not. It's almost vertical, at least on the north end. So that might be something you're going to run up against, having to maintain that. Will the property owner, comply? And if they do, will they comply as quickly as the town wishes them to? And okay.
Thank you, Peter. Ian?
Yes, no, Peter, you're right. That was one of the conditions, and it certainly fluctuated. I remember at the north end, after the NSCAR and the storm of 2019, in March 2019, it was more or less impossible to get up. And with the Chapter 91 issue, when we have applicants before us to do repairs to the bulkheads, they say that Chapter 91 is not within our purview. So we are only able to use the recreation aspect of our local bylaws to have a discussion as to how it's impeding progress, access on the beach in the intertidal zone. If you're when you're next out in Sconset and you go to the point, as it were, below the Larson's old property of where the SPPF has a few placards, and there's an overview of the geotubes to the north. To the south, you can see the choir rolls that have just been rebuilt at 79 Baxter Road, and they basically intrude into the rack line at this point, even in the summer. And they're quite impassable. I do actually go down to that beach during the winter more than I do in the summer, because of course there's a public access issue. And one of the discussions in 2013, when the geotubes were originally proposed, was whether or not SBPF would allow for public access down the bluff as part of the license, the orders of conditions, and they were adamant. My understanding was that they were adamant that they would not allow that. And so it unfortunately did not come to pass. So, and, and Matt, thank you for your support and everybody else on this issue, because it's been a big concern of mine, as it has of yours, Matt. Over the years, it's become increasingly evident how difficult it would be. And Vince was talking about birding on the North Shore. And it's not exactly a smooth stroll along the beach. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Ian. Gary?
So I have a question. If this is a letter that's going to the state authorities, do you really want to put in the words that say definition of passable beaches around coastal engineering structure, and then say that it's up to them? Well, leave that on there, Vince. I need to look at that.
I beg your pardon. I'll put it right back up.
Yeah, please. Because what I would think we should do, perhaps, well, wait till Vince gets it back up. When it says actions to undertake. So it says identify all pre-1978 structures and identify where may need ramps or adequate passage around or over coastal engineering structures. And then you get rid of the next 1, 2, 3, 4 lines and the next thing that it would say is loss of walkable beach due to shifting sand and or sea level rise triggers the requirement for passage over a coastal engineering structure. So what do we need this whole, do we really think it's wise to ask these state authorities to get into this less than ankle deep or X feet wide and stuff like that? Aren't we better off just saying, identify all the structures where we may need ramps, and then say loss of walkable beach may require something else? Why do we want to get the state to get involved in this
Gary?
Stuff? Yes.
I think we're talking about two different documents. The letter to the state is not what's on the screen. what's on the screen are notes from a conversation about what we might do locally.
Okay,
But I appreciate your comments. Just wanted to make sure that we
Okay.
were clear. And Vince, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm correct.
okay, but we shouldn't recommend that in our letter that we do that. What we want to know is make sure we identify the structures and then remind them that the loss of beach requires these other structures, ramps.
Thank you, Gary. Other comments?
Well,
Ian?
Mary, if I may, it was brought to my attention that in ADA ramps, there are various requirements of the maximum being a 5% incline, and I believe a 2% incline over stairs. So if we insisted right now on ADA compliance, there would be some massive structures would have to be constructed to get over some of the bulkheads. So I'm not sure whether we, I think it's certainly a question to ask at the local level as we discuss this going forward. But I think in terms of getting stairs as a first step would probably be easier to accomplish. Maybe I should put it that way.
ADA does allow for exemptions in certain circumstances. I'm by no means an expert on that.
You
No,
probably know more than I do. I think I can guarantee you know more than I do, I'm afraid.
Okay. Anything
It's
further
Matt,
on?
real quick. I think you're writing in the asking for ADA everywhere right out of the gate is probably not a good strategy. I think, I think keeping it to stairs or passage of some type makes more sense, when we get to that level. And then one thought I had is, can Concom, when they're discussing the renewal of some of these structures, can they, sort of set it aside, delay, and wait for a DEP review? Can you say this is, we can't, we have this concern, we'd like to get DEP input before we, before we complete, before we make a determination? Is that something that's allowed?
That's a good question, Matt, because it's been batted backwards and forwards, especially it sort of came 18 Washington Pond Road as to what we could consider and what we couldn't. And that's, I think, what triggered the letter that Jeff Carlson sent our administrator to Mass Waterways. And I don't believe that he's received a reply yet. So I'll ask him that we have a special meeting on Thursday, this coming Thursday, which involves SPPF and annual reports. And so I'll make a point of asking you about that.
Okay.
And just a quick follow-up, Mary. Some of this is kind of murky, and you just have to make the determination. At some point, you have to make the determination and then let it get sorted out. At some point, if we keep asking and you keep not getting any clear answers from anyone, eventually you just say, well, we can't do this till we get that. And then, especially if you get a positive letter back from DEP at some point, if they say, yes, it is a requirement, and yes, we'll require it, then, then you have another structure come in front of you, say, well, we need determination from DEP. And, if the lawyers and the owners try to fight that, then at least you've got something, tangible to actually talk about.
All right, let's leave Concom business to the Concom.
Mary, if I may just say, that Matt's absolutely right, and that that most recent application I was referring to, basically it was brought to our attention that the applicants were getting thoroughly sick of us delaying them, and we're,
let's leave
right.
Concom issues to the Concom.
Okay.
Thank you. Certainly there are things that we can learn from current situations that will help us develop recommendations, but I'd rather not get into, taking apart a particular instance. All right, and so in that vein, let's move on. Is there more discussion about the priority 1 projects for Matticat from the design thinking workshop? Again, we have not moved anything forward internally as Vince has been on leave, but wanted to leave this on the agenda as a continuing discussion in case there are thoughts from committee members. If there are none, we will move to public comment. Are there members of the public present today that wish to offer a comment on something either not on the agenda or on a topic of discussion today? You can just go ahead and unmute and announce yourself if you are. If there is no public comment, next item on the agenda, new business committee and natural resources department reports.
Mary, I think Liz Trillos unmuted.
Oh,
Yeah. I'd like to say that I've been away now for over a year, but I walk that beach in Sconset all the time. It's one of my favorite beach walking areas. So I'm one of the few people that hasn't been seen there. Thank you.
thank you, Liz. Moving on to new business and committee reports. Christy, I had called on you earlier and thank you for joining us today. I didn't know if there was anything further you wanted to add from the capital program committee. I know we're going into the fall review season. So if there's anything that should be on our radar that we should be aware of that's happening with capital projects, be great to hear about them.
Okay, yeah, I will be cognizant of that. We are kind of early, but kind of in the middle, but early with meeting with the department heads to go over their budgets. And I will keep an eye out for any components or requests that might be relative to this committee.
Thank you. Anything from other committee members? Peter?
Yeah, the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board decided this spring and then talked about it over the summer. We don't meet as frequently as we usually meet during the year, that we're going to do quarterly by the calendar year reports of our discussions and possible recommendations to the select board, quarterly reports. And they may or may not cross over into the territory of this committee, but I'm just wondering if that's do you guys want, should we be CC'd on it? Should I send it to Vincent as well as town administration? Can that be helpful? I don't know, but just letting you know that sometime this week I'll be sending that report to Erica Mooney, and then she'll distribute to select board and Libby. So
Yes.
I think it'd be important, Peter.
Yeah. If I may, Mary?
Yeah.
Delighted that the cracks quarterly reports got picked up somewhere else. I didn't know that was happening. I don't know if that's where it started or not, but okay. If you want to send it to me, Peter, and if you want me to distribute it to the crack members, I'm very happy to do that, but as needed.
okay.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think it's a good idea. Other comments from committee members?
I just have one minor one, Mary, if I may.
Yep.
Normally after a hurricane event or pass by or anything like that, I would have a storm report of some sort to say what erosion we've had. In anticipation of this, I didn't get to go out this recently, but just before I went on leave, I made sure that we checked all of our erosion monitoring spots, and we'll be able to do a report on that. We actually added 2 new ones as well, and we're seeking other locations to add as well. Just to give the committee a very brief synopsis, we, at the suggestion of the Sconset Civic Trust, added a few locations at Codfish Park, mainly on town parcels, and what would have once been access roads. And we've also added some at Dionis as well. We're seeking others along the North Shore as well. We'll push that along as we can. But there's going to be an uptick in that, and they'll get monitored monthly or over the winter cycle as they have done. And if anyone has any suggestions for the locations where there's a piece of public infrastructure and an erosion zone, happy to see if I can install another location anywhere, provided there's something to monitor.
Great, thank you, Vince. Which reminds me, Ian, if you have any influence with your namesake hurricane that you could moderate its effects, that would be lovely.
I'll be on the phone to the deities right away.
So hopefully that Hurricane Ian will not affect Nantucket. We don't know yet exactly what Fiona did, but those pictures of waves were certainly striking.
They were indeed. Well, in fact, behind me, my screensaver is taken from my parents' house at 99 Baxter Road, and you could actually see, maybe you can, that low-lying fence, which was demarcated between the footpath in those days and the bluff. That was taken during the height of a 3-day nor'easter by my father. So, which does much less damage than a hurricane hitting us head on.
Anything further from committee members? And if not, Gary?
Just Vince, based on the last several days, I'm not on island till later on in the week again, so I haven't been there. And I just watched the pictures of the waves that show up on the news broadcast in the morning. Have there been any serious erosion conditions as a result of Fiona?
I haven't been out to monitor, and neither has Morgan so much. She did get to check 1 or 2 spots around Madikit and Smith's Point area. She noted some beaches getting thinner, but no coastal banks lost. I've heard, though not seen, that there was some erosion at by the wastewater treatment plant, down by the sewer treatment plant, rather. But no, I have not gone out to check this yet. I have been playing catch up.
Okay, thanks.
We'll ask for a report at maybe at our next meeting. You know, if there's anything to report. Hopefully not, but you never know. Right, we will take, next upcoming meeting dates are October 11th and 25th. The 11th is the day after the holiday for Indigenous Peoples Day. And of course, as always, happy to take suggestions for topics for the agendas. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Matt. Roll call vote, Gary Beller,
Aye.
Peter Brace,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman,
Aye.
Ian Golding,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre. Aye. Thank you. We'll see you in October.
Thank you, Mary. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna stop. Yes.